5 of the most dangerous countries for tourists, which are insanely beautiful, extraordinarily interesting, but at the same time dangerous. This is Dima Karmanov with you. I am a travel organization expert, founder of the company Dallure Travel. I have visited more than 50 countries, completed hundreds of routes, and driven over 1 million kilometers behind the wheel. And now I am ready to present to you the 5 most dangerous countries that I have personally visited. In these 5 countries, it is very interesting and beautiful, but think 10 times. Is it worth going there? 5th place, Indonesia. And here people are eaten. I remember how in the mountains of New Guinea, that very Indonesian island where the Papuans live, we were walking with a guide, and a small, frail old man came towards us. The Papuan grandfather in a loincloth with a special contraption made from a gourd hanging at his private area where he hid his belongings. And this grandfather looked at us like that. On one hand, he was very surprised because he surely hadn't seen white people in these parts. On the other hand, I thought about the fact that he was very old. And 30, 40, 50 years ago, cannibalism was practiced very actively in these areas. So this particular grandfather I met, he surely had tasted human flesh. This might seem like a joke or something that not serious, but to this day in Papua, New Guinea, there are tribes that practice cannibalism. There are many villages, many tribes. They speak different languages, often not understanding each other or the official authorities. And traveling from one such village to another, you might run into anyone. So take this seriously. Yes, it might seem funny. Papuans, cannibals, human flesh, yes, but we wouldn't want any of us to actually be eaten by such a wonderful old man or his fellow tribesmen. But in Indonesia, people are not only eaten by other people. On the island of Komodo and the surrounding islands live giant lizards known as Komodo dragons. These are the largest remaining reptiles on Earth, direct descendants of dinosaurs. So these remarkable monitor lizards kill and eat people who are careless, who stray from the beaten paths, who decide to explore the island with guides. And every year, several people fall victim to these monitor lizards and end up being injured or even eaten by them. It seems like such a beast is lying there very calmly, dozing in the sun. You want to take a picture with it, you want to get closer. Well, if not to touch it, but what's the harm in getting a few meters closer and taking a wonderful selfie? So these lizards have lightning fast reactions. And if such a monitor lizard decides to chase you, you won't be able to outrun it. Moreover, they have venomous saliva. If you don't receive medical assistance immediately, you could simply weaken and die from the venom. Therefore, when traveling on this island, pay close attention to warnings about not approaching monitor lizards closely. It is indeed very, very dangerous. The most dangerous thing you can encounter in Indonesia is a small, ordinary mosquito because they carry diseases. One of the most dangerous of these diseases is tropical malaria. Malaria is a very insidious disease. You don't immediately realize that you are sick. You might think that you are just feeling unwell from the flight or are adjusting after jet lag. But in reality, the malaria virus is already developing in you. It all starts with weakness, and then it can progress to affecting the lungs and kidneys. It all affects the brain, anemia, weakness. For pregnant women, it is extremely dangerous for both the fetus and the future child. Malaria needs to be treated immediately, right there on the spot. When help is not provided in time, people simply die from malaria. In Indonesia and other tropical countries, this disease is well known and doctors more or less understand how to treat it. If you leave the virus inside you and go back home, there's no guarantee that doctors in your city will recognize malaria and be able to treat it. When visiting countries like Indonesia, now it's essential to remember precautionary measures: repellents, protective clothing against mosquitoes, avoid staying in areas where there are many mosquitoes. There are vaccines that protect not only against malaria, but also against other tropical diseases. Many tropical countries have even introduced a requirement for tourists to present a vaccination certificate when visiting these countries. If you don't have such a certificate, you might simply not be allowed to cross the border. The United States of America takes the 4th place in my ranking. It would seem to be a civilized country. What could be dangerous there? And yet the USA has a large number of wild places, many wild animals, and there are very dangerous people. I remember a story when my wife and I were traveling in Death Valley, which is a national park in California. It is the driest place on earth, and everywhere we heard the same advice: be sure to take m'oud, water with you. Dehydration is the biggest danger in Death Valley. We bought water at the supermarket, left it in the car trunk, and ran off to explore the sand dunes. There were wonderful dunes. We arrived early in the morning when it was still cool, and everything was great. We ventured quite far into the desert, and only there, when it started to get hot and the initial excitement wore off, did we suddenly realize that we had forgotten the water in the car, and we had to make our way back in the heat under the scorching sun. If at the beginning we were still walking at a decent pace, it soon became very difficult. Your feet sink into the sand. You climb and climb. Over these dunes, you expend a lot of energy. All the water has already left your body, and you're completely drenched in sweat. In the end, we were almost crawling up those dunes, and I don't know if we would have been able to get out of there if we hadn't met 2 Frenchmen who shared a bottle of water with us. But water is not the only danger that can await you in the wild places of the United States. Take the Grand Canyon, for example. It's wonderful to stroll in the shade along the rim of the Grand Canyon. There are many parking spots, many viewpoints. Everything is great. Yes, but if you decide to go down, and it's worth going down because it's very interesting, all the way to the Colorado River, then first assess your strength. Because when you're going down, everything is fine, especially if you start the descent in the morning. Yes, you walk in the cool and wonder why you were told that this descent is so difficult. But when you start climbing back up, under the sun, you are essentially on a scorching frying pan under direct sunlight with no chance to hide, no shade, and you are constantly going uphill. This is where the difficulties begin. I think there are posters hanging every quarter mile of this descent. Are you sure you can make it back? Down by choice, but up is mandatory. As the posters say, it's just physically very hard to endure. When we reached the top, the companions we were walking with, who were either overtaking us or being overtaken by us, we just hugged each other because it felt like you had run 3 marathons. Keep this in mind and gauge your strength. Moreover, in the United States, in national parks, there are dangerous animals, and not just animals. For example, in Arizona and Nevada, we repeatedly encountered posters warning that swarms of killer bees have been spotted in these areas. They are dangerous because they attack a person with the entire hive at once, and instead of just 2 or 3 bee stings, as usual, a person receives 70, 80, or even 100 stings simultaneously. These bees chase people. They can follow them for many meters and continuously sting. Besides bees, there are also larger creatures in those areas. While traveling through almost all the national parks in the western part of the USA, we encountered a poster that said, "Attention, caution, danger. Mountain lions inhabit this area. Huge cats that can attack people." When you read the instructions on these posters about what to do, if you encounter such a mountain lion, it says you should try to appear larger, stand on tiptoes, and scare it. All of this is detailed in the instruction. And the last point on each of these posters states, if you have taken all precautions but The lion still attacks you, then fight back. And that's what is most frightening. It means that such cases exist. They happen, and indeed, you have to fight these lions. Yes, my wife was so impressed by these posters that she found a hefty club, a stick, and went everywhere with this stick. In America, there are wild places, there are wild animals, and there are wild people. And you can encounter such people in big cities, often in the center of big cities. In whichever large American city I was in, I constantly came across people who look at you with an appraising gaze. Can they take something from you or not? Can you fight back or can't you fight back? It's very dangerous to walk around New York in the evening, even in Manhattan, even in the center. You can encounter anyone. In San Francisco, in the neighborhood adjacent to the city hall, there is just a huge number of homeless people, drug addicts, and clearly criminal types on the street. And when you walk past, they also look at you with that appraising gaze. That feeling of being stared at intently and appraisingly never left me, probably in any major American city. The last time I felt this particularly acutely was in Russia in the 90s. When you walk down the street and they assess whether they can take something from you or not, and this still exists in the United States. Therefore, when you are in the USA, remember that the most dangerous thing there is the people. By the way, if you're interested in knowing where you should go, where you shouldn't, which countries to visit and which to avoid, and how to make your trip safe, you can simply message me, the word travel, on Telegram. And I will help you plan your route and organize your trip exactly according to your preferences. Third place, Brazil. You might think that Brazil is dangerous because of jaguars or anacondas or some tropical spiders that live in the jungle. But in reality, that's not the case. Yes, I have been to the Amazon, I have been in the jungle, but finding a live jaguar, let alone an anaconda, there is practically impossible. The most dangerous thing in Brazil is the people. I remember once traveling from one Brazilian city to another with an American, and he told me about his best friend whom he buried a year ago. The friend in Rio de Janeiro just went out to the beach with his girlfriend. A few people approached them. Threatening with a gun, they said, "Give us your wallet and camera." He wanted to act like a hero. He started arguing and resisting. Without saying another word, they just killed him. They shot him right there on the spot with a gun and took the camera and wallet from the corpse. Thankfully, nothing happened to the girl, but such a senseless death in broad daylight is unfortunately not uncommon in Brazil. Locals told me that out of 5 murder cases, only 1 is investigated, while 4 are not even looked into. They believe that it's impossible to investigate in many places. In Brazil, human life is worth nothing and death is taken very lightly. In Rio de Janeiro, seemingly a huge city with a large number of tourists and wonderful beaches, robberies and murders occur on these very beaches. This happens not only in the evening when it's simply dangerous to be there, but even in broad daylight. Everyone knows about it and no one pays much attention to it. And if you look a bit higher when you are, for example, on Copacabana, you will see that clinging to the mountains like honeycombs are a large number of huts and shanties. These areas are called favelas. This is illegal construction where the urban poor live. Police do not venture. There, it is very dangerous. The power there is usually held by local crime bosses, drug lords, and you definitely should not go there. Without the accompaniment of knowledgeable local people who are willing to vouch for you and protect you, yes. I have been to the favelas of Rio. I will probably talk more about this in other videos. But how to get there, that's a special and separate story. In Rio de Janeiro, in a tourist spot, there was a real threat to my life. And I understand that this can happen to anyone. What happened, how this story developed, and what you should do if you encounter such a situation, I will tell in a separate video on my channel. Stay tuned for announcements, and I promise it will be interesting. When these videos are released, I will add them to the description of this video. The second place in my ranking is Pakistan. Yes, Pakistan is a very interesting country. It's a country with wonderful nature, with mountains. This is a country with an incredible number of interesting cultural sites. There are castles, there are fortresses, and there are just amazing mosques that look like something out of an Eastern fairy tale. Before I visited Pakistan, I had no idea how interesting and beautiful this country is. But on the very first evening, when I arrived at the hotel after the flight and tried to go out into the city for a walk, I was stopped by armed guards. They pointed their guns at me and said, "No, you can't go out. It's too dangerous. Without an escort, without local people, you simply can't go for a walk around the city." In other words, it was seriously impossible to get past under security and go out into the city. This security was armed and very serious. Later, I realized that indeed the city was not safe. There is a large military presence in the city, especially if you are near the Indian border, near the disputed territories. There are a couple of territories there over which a war could almost break out. In those places, it's impossible to be outside on the street. They constantly check documents there. Being a tourist, that means being under suspicion. Maybe you're some kind of spy, maybe someone else. Besides the lack of freedom of movement, it's noticeable in Pakistan that the country is very poor with an appallingly low standard of living. People live in conditions that are hard for us to even imagine. Honestly, I felt sorry for these people. There is no clean drinking water, and it's dangerous to drink, so the water is only bottled, and it's even better to boil it afterwards. That is to say, it's a country where it's difficult for an ordinary tourist to survive, and it requires certain skills and good travel organization to not only stay alive and healthy, but also to enjoy the beauty that this country can offer. And the number one on my list, the most dangerous country I visited is, of course, Yemen. Yemen is my most interesting journey. It's a trip that I still recall with great enthusiasm because it's like traveling to another planet. But I remember how I was driving to the hotel through the capital of Yemen, Sana'a, and saw entire districts destroyed by war, streets damaged by shells, houses with walls riddled with bullets, and remnants of burned out equipment. My companions told me, yes, there were particularly fierce battles here. I happened to visit at a fortunate time, when one war in Yemen had already ended and the second war had not yet begun. They literally had a year of respite. And during that year, I managed to visit the country, which I do not regret at all. But even at that time, there was practically no tourism in the country. When I tried to get insurance, not a single insurance company agreed to sell it to me. No travel company could offer me a tour to this country. I had to organize it myself. When traveling around the country, as you drive on the highway, there is a checkpoint every 10 to 15 kilometers. They check documents there. As a foreigner, you must have a special permit with a description of your route, where you are going, when, on which days, at what time, and so on. And you must have local escorts who are responsible for you. And your route is tracked from point to point, from one checkpoint to another. This is done to prevent the kidnapping of tourists and foreigners. And this is a national pastime in the culture, in the traditions of Yemen, taking hostages and demanding ransom. If some tribe or village manages to take a foreign hostage, they immediately make demands. They either demand a ransom or some simpler things like bringing electricity to the village or paving the road leading to it. And after that, once they receive guarantees or money, they release the hostages. Hostages are treated well. They are considered guests. However, I doubt that any of us would want to be such guests. There is a lot of weapons among the population. You walk into a regular cafe in the capital city and see men sitting there with automatic rifles. When asked why they have automatic rifles, since weapons are supposedly banned in the capital, they tell us, well, they are sheikhs, no laws apply to them. A sheikh is the head of a family, the head of a tribe. There, probably every second person is a sheikh in Yemen. You walk somewhere in the mountains, see a flock of sheep, see a shepherd. He seems like a kindly old man. As soon as he turns around, you see that he has a Kalashnikov rifle slung over his shoulder. And to my questions or about why they are all armed, my guides say, well, we are men. How can men be without weapons? I say, but you don't have a weapon. You're accompanying us. He says, what do you mean I don't? He opens his backpack and takes out a pistol. He says, well, I didn't bring the rifle. It's too heavy for the mountains, but a pistol is a must. And at home, I have 3 grenade launchers. So you can imagine how explosive the situation is there, how any spark immediately turns into a problem and a disaster. In Yemen, on the island of Socotra, we met a wonderful guy from Belarus. He knew Arabic well and showed us some places. A friendly, jovial guy. He had a way of charming everyone. And then about 3 weeks later, I saw a news report that there had been a terrorist attack in Yemen. And among the victims was a citizen of Belarus. I looked at the photos and yes, it was that same guy. That's why sometimes we think that the danger isn't that great, that nothing has ever happened to us. We might travel somewhere, even to a dangerous country, and everything will be fine. But then you encounter what actually happens and realize that safety is very important, and you need to be prepared and not neglect the advice, recommendations, and instructions that are given and are meant to ensure your safety. Safe travels to you.